Hi, it's time for another math easy solution. To discuss further into the hashtag 9/11 Truth video series, and now go over part 5, and this is going to be covering my thoughts on 9/11 as well as some enlightenment that I have had, or just a realization, and that is that 9/11 may just have ushered in the global world government already. And I'll explain that in this video. I'll also briefly talk about the Charlottesville psychological operation, in my opinion. Again, that's because 9/11, until it's resolved, my view is pretty much anything and anything is by default a psychological operation. Same goes with the North Korea, quote, threat, hashtag NWO. So yeah, buckle up. It's going to be a pretty extensive video. And again, note, if you don't have time to watch this whole video, you could skip to the end for summary and conclusions. You could play this video at a faster speed, and then top secret life hack, like always, your brain gets used to faster speed, so try 2 times speed on YouTube in desktop mode. It's absolutely amazing. It's like downloading knowledge into your brain, and you actually do get much smarter. And also you can download and read the notes. Link will be in the description below, as well as I'll posting these notes on Steemit, so follow me on Steemit at MES. And also you could watch a video in parts, so it doesn't need to be all at once. So yeah, let's get into it. And also I want to point out, I've started my new free energy video series, and you could watch that. Here's the link at mes.fm/free-energy-playlist. Yeah, so make sure to check that out. Yeah, so now let's look at this video, part 5 of the 9/11 Truth video series. And basically the topics to cover are, number 1, 9/11 Truth updates. Number 2, my new free energy video series is out. And then 3, I'm going to go over how 9/11 ushered in the NWO. So my view is we already live in one, and gradually it's just going to become more and more apparent that who's running the world. And also number 4 is my view on socialists versus capitalists and how they miss the big picture, which is again 9/11 and hidden technology. It's a very interesting take on there, so stay tuned for that part in this video. So and also I'm going to go over the bogus North Korea, quote, threat. And then number 6, Charlottesville CIA deep state divide and conquer psychological operation. And then 7 will be Trump will get reelected. And the reason will shock you, a little bit of clickbait title there, but it is actually, my view is he will get reelected because he serves a purpose. And I'll get to that in a bit. And also, gold, Bitcoin, blockchain, and the Constitution is not going to, quote, save us. What we're actually in is a more of a spiritual battle, and this will be very interesting because again, I believe we already are in the new world government, global government, and that very little technology is actually by accident, including Bitcoin, blockchain, etc. And that stockpiling of gold is not going to help either. Again, I'm not saying don't get into those because there is still money involved and you still have to live your life. Just same thing as paying your taxes or paying your just parking passes or parking tickets. You still have to do them. Doesn't mean they're right, but you still have to do them for the time being, unless we have a coordinated effort to just boycott everything, which hopefully we can. And also, so let's just jump right in. So 9/11 Truth update. So recall from part 2 that I went over how Twitter disapproved my ad about Dr. Judy Wood. Hashtag Twitter is not trying to make money. Hashtag NWO. So my view is Twitter was probably from the beginning part of the NWO. So this was my earlier video in part 2. Well, I showed that it says, Matthew Solution, your tweet has now been approved for use in your Twitter ads campaign. And that was this one where I said the most feared person in the world is Dr. Judy Wood. The towers return to dust in midair. Hashtag free energy. So I posted that one, and then my the ad got disapproved. And now what they've done is they've just completely disabled my advertising account. So you can see here, access disabled. We found that your account is not compliant with our policies for promoted products and have disabled access to your Twitter ads account. Please know that you will no longer be able to advertise on Twitter and may not open new advertising accounts. And so these were the tweets that caused my Twitter ads account to be disabled, and it was these tweets about 9/11. So what happened on 9/11 is irrefutable. The towers turned to dust. You could see this, free energy, protest government, hashtag Dr. Judy Wood. This is a tweet I did, so this is unbelievable. I've absolutely, to this day, it's just so hard to just look at this image and see, like, just what is that? And you can just look at it again, this small section. I'll show this these photos because this just tells so much. This is like absolutely like barely any rubble, and it's like almost ground level, and there's that building still there, and just by looking at this is unbelievable. Look at how absolutely little rubble there is. Where did the towers go? And look, it's like a giant hole in there. And this is perfectly clean. There's the other tweet that was also that I was advertising because I was just trying to expose this. And it's that other one I've been sharing a lot. So where did the towers go? Asking for a friend. And this is one of the best photos ever. I have no idea what this is. That's not planes. That's not demolitions. It's not thermite, not nukes, whatever. In this one, you can see a still image. This is like steel columns just falling down and turning to dust, trailing a thick dust there. That is ridiculous. And here, where are the towers? And there's no damage here. Ambulance is not crushed, not even the window broken, and it's like ground level there. Where is anything? So yeah, it is clear that not only is content censored, from my earlier videos I show that they get censored as not advertiser friendly, but also advertisers are censored from freely advertising anything that the NWO establishment doesn't want. So it's not about the money. I keep telling people this. And now let's go further. But then again, it is understandable why those tweets will get my account disabled, because they are irrefutable evidence that the towers turned to dust in midair, and the NWO don't want too many people to know about that. Yeah, so those images alone, in my view, are just bombshell evidence. Alright, so now let's just jump right into new part. So I just uploaded my new free energy video series. So I just started my new hashtag free energy video series, and you could watch the first episode here. Here's a screen grab from it where I did a just a funny satire piece of Dr. Judy Wood's Wikipedia page, which has been deleted, and I showed why it is just ridiculous, and that it pretty much has to be deleted because there's no way of spinning her evidence or her book where the towers go. And look at the conspiracy theorist label everywhere. So on. It's very hilarious in my opinion. So make sure to watch that. So Introduction to Suppressed Technology and Science. So I'll be researching into developing both the theory and in building a physical free energy device. So follow along my series, mes.fm/free energy playlist. Also, please consider supporting my work by donating, and the links will be in the description below. Or just go to mes.fm/donate. So now let's look at the topic of today's video, and that is 9/11 has ushered in the global world government, and everything else is just a formality. So note, initially I was working on a video on the 9/11 Commission report, but after realizing the new psyops in the mainstream media news cycle, such as the bogus North Korea quote nuclear threat, which I believe nuclear weapons are just antiquated and old technology, and also Charlottesville riots right out of the CIA deep state divide and conquer playbook, I decided to make this video giving my views on the current state of the world to help whomever watches video gain some calm and clarity about this crazy world. So that's my view. The NWO wants everyone just to be hopeless and just and fearful and whatnot, and not trust your fellow man or woman. So this is just so that's why I feel the need to present my views on this, and hopefully you will find my views on this pretty enlightening. So now, basically, after much thought, I've come to the realization that September 11, 2001 is the date upon which the global world government has been ushered into existence, and likely even the beginning of the quote end times as prophesied in the Bible and other religious texts, because it's a very crazy world, and I think it might just be the beginning. But regardless, the beginning of the world government in terms of just when it was ushered in, and everything that follows is just according to plan. But 9/11 was the big event. In my view, it was pretty much the opening ceremony of this NWO. So everything else that follows from 9/11, especially in world geopolitics, is nothing more than formalities. This is because it is highly unlikely that countries around the world are simply playing along with the blatant false flag 9/11 quote attacks, and that they are quote ignorant of the blatant free energy hidden technology used on 9/11. So there is some coordination in a global scale that needs to be accounted for, and in my view it might just be that there is a global government. And as explained in 9/11 Truth Part 2, many countries used 9/11 as an excuse to bolster and increase security, policing, and surveillance among their people, hashtag police state. Thus, it is my view that we are currently living in a technological global smart dictatorship, such that many people think they are actually free if they simply never do anything or, quote, think anything against the establishment status quo. Yeah, for example, if you just work your regular 9 to 5, go to school, do that, and never question establishment, you're never going to experience censorship the way that, well, someone like me or anyone else posting controversial topic is gonna receive. So yeah, ignorance is a pretty much bliss, or in my view, just a trance-like blind state. So now this goes especially for political discourse, such as between the, quote, left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, socialist versus capitalist, regulations versus free market, etc. What this kind of discourse alone, so when you look at this kind of it just by itself, what this fails to comprehend is fabricated terror, hidden technology advancements, and exactly where the trillions in taxpayer dollars go to. So I'm just talking about just a generic overall kind of discourse between you, because I never see anyone, Republican, Democrat, talking about fabricated terror events, 9/11 false flag, and how there's hidden technology, because those are, in my view, facts that you need to account. Yeah, so basically a generic, quote, free market capitalistic explanation of seemingly horrible wasting of taxpayer money and government corruption is that centralization is simply an inefficient way to manage resources. So I hear that a lot. Free market is better than centralization. It's government wastes money, etc. But then when you look at the socialist side, a generic socialist explanation of government corruption is something along the lines of corporate lobbyists having effectively seized control of the government and are managing on a purely capitalistic agenda, saying, companies are sitting in their lobbyists and pretty much taking over. But again, both sides are missing the big picture. In my view, the government is efficient, in fact, highly efficient. Proof of this, 9/11 proves this. 9/11 proves that advanced hidden technology exists, and that advanced hidden organization systems have been developed to keep advanced technology hidden to the present day. So you need some sort of highly efficient organization techniques to keep highly advanced technology hidden. This is amazing. Yeah, so to say the government is inefficient or wasting resources, like just because of due to inefficiency and the free market is better, that is categorically false. Government is efficient. And 9/11 again proves this. 9/11 also proves that fabricated terror events are real, and that advanced hidden propaganda systems and technologies exist to manage the human perception of such events at a global scale and affecting all aspects of human life, such as school, news media, higher, quote, education, and quote, scientific research. Add that quotes there. If you're not talking about hidden tech, then it's not really scientific. And now again, 9/11 proves that countries and governments around the world and in different languages never toe too far away from the, quote, official Western propaganda about 9/11. And 9/11 also proves that many countries have followed in lockstep unison in enacting measures against a, quote, phantom menace, reference from Star Wars, known as, quote, terror that simply strip people of their rights. For something like 9/11 is a fact that it was a fabricated terror event. And who suffers? You betcha, the people. So 9/11 proves that the entire world can be, quote, steered into believing or acting upon a completely fabricated threat, such as the war on, quote, terror. And 9/11 alone strongly suggests that we live in a global dictatorship, and in my opinion was the one major event that firmly established the new world order. And then the question remains here: how many other events throughout history currently happening or will happen are orchestrated? 9/11 was one of the most monumental events in world history. This proves that other less significant events currently happening today, or have happened, or will happen, are almost certainly being orchestrated by these same forces running the world. This goes for the absolutely bogus news cycle of North Korea, quote, threatening the United States, hashtag don't you believe it? And here I had to tweet, anyone that believes North Korea is a, quote, threat needs to wake up, hashtag no more war. And I showed some search engines for North Korean U.S. Spending. Here's the gross domestic product of the entire North Korean country, according to Google here, 12.38 billion U.S. And here the comparison with South Korea, 1.4 trillion, United States 18.5 trillion, Japan 4.9 trillion. And then here is the United States just military budget. This was in 2015, 598 billion per year. And if you think North Korea is a threat, just don't start with me. So I posted this also on the Donald vote subvote or subverse, and I wrote North Korea GDP 12 billion, U.S. military budget 598 billion. Wake up, people! No more war. And this guy's like, what kind of moronic shit is this? So if you have more money than me, you are immune to me stabbing you in an elevator. And then I wrote, try getting an elevator with a billionaire. North Korea is controlled opposition. So more accurately, try to get an elevator with the richest man in the world, at least publicly, Bill Gates, which I believe is also a puppet. And again, 9/11, in my view, proves this. Because my view is no one can call themselves a philanthropist that is somehow the world's richest man and doesn't talk about 9/11 or hidden tech. So that alone is proof Bill Gates is a puppet. So now let's go further. Yeah, so since 9/11 proves, or at least highly suggests that we currently live in a global dictatorship, so my view is that we are. My view is that North Korea is literally just a giant human experimentation project at a country-wide basis and used for the odd fake threat to increase military spending and patriotism. So again, to account for why North Korea is messed up like that and why it's a threat, you still need to first fully understand 9/11. 9/11 suggests we already live in a global dictatorship. So North Korea is just, a place for manufactured human suffering at a grand scale, and you could use that knowledge for other purposes, like manipulating the mind of billions across the world. So now trillions of dollars of taxpayer money are not, quote, wasted. So this is against the just a generic capitalistic view of a free market, saying it's much better than the government in terms of efficiency. But again, when you look at hidden tech, you have to explain that wasted money may itself be a ploy. So remember, 1 trillion equals $1,000 billion. Very few companies are quote worth trillions. If you go to look at Forbes, the world's most valuable brands, you have Apple worth or the brand value is 170 billion. So that's interesting. Brand revenue, it's 214 billion, so it's more than its value. That's interesting. Google's 100 billion. You have 87 for Microsoft, and Facebook 73.5. Coca-Cola 56. You keep going on. You have Amazon, Disney, Toyota, McDonald's, Samsung. These are all in the billions. But again, 9/11 proves that none of the richest, most technologically advanced companies have ever publicly produced technology anywhere close to that used 16 years ago on 9/11 to turn towers into dust in midair. Why? These are questions we must answer. To speculate as to why, let's take a look at how much money just the United States alone is dealing with. If you go to Wikipedia, just look at their federal budget right here, 2017. So you can look at here, this was submitted by Barack Obama this was 2016 for the 2017 budget. I believe that's how it works. So here, total expenditures, 4.147 trillion. Deficit, 503 billion. That's how much they're down. They need to owe. Debt, 19.95 billion. GDP, 19.3 trillion dollars. So yeah, U.S. is dealing with trillions. And now, this one I wrote an article earlier. Iraq war cost USA 2 trillion. U.S. government spent over 2 trillion U.S. dollars on an illegal war, on Iraq war. Again, given 9/11 is a fabricated terror event, this was unnecessary money. And this is far more than any of those rich companies like Apple and whatnot. So the Iraq war could cost pretty much every single company in the world, or close to every billionaire company. So that is a very interesting stuff. So here I wrote, so when accounting for and then also when you're accounting for the other wars in the Middle East, such as Afghanistan and Pakistan, this figure becomes 4.8 trillion, and by 2053, accounting for interest will total 7.9 trillion US dollars. So yes, all the companies in the entire world are basically chump change when you compare it to the trillions of dollars spent, collected, and thrown on war. And now here, if you go to Market Watch right here, they talk about those airstrikes that Trump did on Syria. So here's how much it costs to replace the 59 Tomahawk missiles Trump fired on Syria. Each Tomahawk missile made by Raytheon costs about $1 million. So it could cost about $60 million to replace the cruise missiles that the U.S. military rained on Syrian targets Thursday night. Each Tomahawk missile made by Raytheon likely costs $1 million according to experts. What is this expert? So the U.S. used 59 of them on a Syrian airbase. Yeah, in response to the Syrian government's chemical weapons attack that killed scores of civilians earlier this week. Again, it was alleged, in my view, was just a psychological operation or false flag. So the missiles used on Thursday likely cost the U.S. military around $1 million, but the latest version of the missile that would replace these could be more costly depending on the size and order of other factors, says Lauren Thompson, a consultant and chief operating officer of the nonprofit Lexington Institute. So think about it. Trump ordered the firing of these missiles on an almost certain false flag, and each one's about $1 million, and in pretty much a few minutes you just wasted $60 million. So these are dealing with much more money than any of these big companies. So again, it should be stated, quote, alleged chemical attack, hashtag pathetic, MSM, or mainstream media, hashtag false flag. So for more info on the almost certain false flag, quote, chemical attack, make sure to check out these videos by Jimmy Dore. He has some great anti-war videos here. Evidence suggests Syria gas attack is false flag. And yes, check it out. MIT officer debunks media and White House on Syrian gas attack. And there's a white helmet, in my view, just a propaganda outlet that have been known for faking footage. So you can watch all those videos, but although an easier way to view the chemical attack is simply point out the fact that 9/11 was a false flag, and the governments and media outlets of the world are still lying about it. Thus, until 9/11 is admitted, any and all future, quote, terror events or, quote, protests or quote, riots are to be considered as false flags by default, unless you can go in there specifically on each event, look at all the police report, look at all the actual evidence, and prove for yourself that it was actually real. But until then, anything the mainstream media says without actual evidence is going to be viewed by default as a false flag, because 9/11 has not been resolved. So yeah, basically I use 9/11 as a litmus test for pretty much everything. So now, important note now. So also reported cost, for example, that Raytheon $1 million, does not necessarily mean, quote, actual cost. To explain how hidden technology is developed, we need to figure out how they are obtaining funding. But again, I further include this, but even this is on the assumption that they are not just getting alien tech for free or something on that lines, and in fact, government is wasting money, and inefficient, etc. But then there's a hidden tech for free. But that's a stretch that I want to do right now, because I still think there's some practical ones you can throw out here, just because they don't actually show a lot of their paperwork. And the CIA just, they have everything classified, redacted. So you're not going to get real info. So anyways, so funding could be through black budget programs, illegal revenue generating programs, i.e. CIA-led drug trafficking, or overpricing of government, wars, and military spending, or a combination of these strategies. So there's a lot of strategies of actually pretty much money laundering / illegally using or black budget spending programs and whatnot. But an example of possible overpricing, which I think might just be one of the methods they use, is as follows. For example, one Tomahawk missile equals $1 million US. But then that million has 100,000 in materials, 100,000 in operating costs to go and launch it, and now you have 800,000 in research and development, and then you got to break down research and development. So let's say research and development is actually 100,000 in Tomahawk research and development, but then you have 700,000 in advanced, hidden, classified, game-changing technology research and development. Yeah, this one right here. So basically research and development can encompass this one, but this is classified, so you don't actually see this $700,000. So you spend $1 million on a Tomahawk, 700,000 goes to actual hidden tech, such as turning towers and dust, free energy, or field propulsion technology, lasers, and microwave technology, stuff that actually are game-changing. And everything else is just, gradual increase of these conventional weapons. So hashtag makes sense. So I'm not saying that this is what is being done, but I'm saying that that we must think about just how these hidden technologies are being funded and developed. Again, on the assumption that there isn't some sort of alien tech being freely exchanged or or have some sort of compromise. Yeah, so again, that's why assumptions are very hard, because everything jumps from there. For example, assuming 9/11 was terrorist, now you're gonna have to have a big terror problem. But once you know it's not, and then once you know it's hidden tech, everything changes, and then you got to go from the start and then go from there. So, and now we need to explain now how the biggest quote companies don't have advanced tech. How come they don't have it? How come the government is? How come Google's not talking about 9/11 false flag? Why are they trying to cover it up? And so on. Same as Wikipedia and others. So one possible explanation is that governments create or infiltrate these same companies, giving an illusion of free market, independent, capitalistic companies. So it is my view that trillions of dollars collected from taxpayers and borrowed from central banks are more than enough to create giant monopolies such as Google, while adding an absolutely ridiculous cover story of its, quote, founding. And here I even had to tweet. It's from the Wikipedia article on Google. And tweeted, we are expected to believe that CIA deep state surveillance tool Google was founded in someone's, quote, garage, hashtag sure. And here's a screen grab from the Wikipedia article on Google. The domain name for Google was registered on September 15, 1997, and the company was incorporated on September 4th, 1998. It was based in the garage of a friend, Susan Wasicki or someone, in Menlo Park, California. Craig Silverstein, a fellow PhD student at Stanford, and was hired as the first employee. And this person says, Google has never had bandwidth issues. Who paid for all that? We need Trump to expose the black budget. Very interesting. Now here, basically, if you believe that Google was actually created in some guy's garage, please take a long, hard walk around your neighborhood to clear your head of all the propaganda you've absorbed in your life, and wake the F up. Hashtag wake up, people. It's not in someone's garage. Again, my view is 9/11 pretty much confirms that. So given the fact of 9/11 being a fabricated terror event using advanced hidden free energy technology, it makes the war crimes by the US and company all the more incriminating. Here's from the Guardian article right here. US fired depleted uranium at civilian areas in 2003 Iraq war. Again, a war that was illegal even when you don't even consider 9/11 as false flag. But once you consider it, this is a blatant war crime, and further solidifies that we do live in a global dictatorship where how no one is pretty much held reliable for this, or held liable or paying or held accountable for these horrible illegal wars. And this is report finds. So Dutch peace group PAC says findings show U.S. was in breach of official advice meant to prevent suffering in conflicts. So Rob Edwards is a 2014. So U.S. forces fired depleted uranium DU weapons at civilian areas and troops in Iraq in breach of official advice meant to prevent unnecessary suffering and conflicts, a report has found. Coordinates revealing where U.S. jets and tanks fired nearly 10,000 rounds in Iraq during the war in 2003 have been obtained by the Dutch peace group PAC. This is the first time that any U.S. Depleted uranium firing coordinates have been released. In my view, is the global government just showing here we're killing all these people. What are you going to do about it? So despite previous requests by United Nations Environment Program and the Iraqi government, so it's the first time they released in 2014, even though they're requesting show us this data. So according to PAC's report, which is due to be published this week, the data shows that many of the depleted uranium rounds were fired in or near populated areas of Iraq, including as Sawanha, Nasiriyah, and Basra. At least 1,500 rounds were also aimed at troops, the group says. And yeah, this conflicts with legal advice from the U.S. Air Force in 1975 suggesting that DU weapons should only be used against hard targets like tanks and armored vehicles. The report says this advice, designed to comply with international law by minimizing deaths and injuries to urban populations and troops, was largely ignored by U.S. forces, it argues. A 6-page memo by Major James Miles and Will Carroll from the International Law Divisions of USAF's Office of the Judge Advocate General concluded in March 1975 that DU weapons were legal. So in 1975 this is legal, but it recommended imposing restrictions on how they were used. In my view, why are these legal? Because once you see the side effects of them, it's absolutely nasty. So use of this munition solely against personnel is prohibited if alternative weapons are available. The memo states this was for legal reasons related to prohibitions against unnecessary suffering and poison. The memo also pointed out that depleted uranium weapons were incendiary and could have indiscriminate impacts in urban areas. They may cause fires which spread thereby causing potential risks of disproportionate injury to civilians or damage to civilian objects. It said precautions to avoid or minimize such risks shall be taken. The use of this weapon or alternate available weapons should be used. PAX estimates that there are more than 300 sites in Iraq contaminated by DU, which will cost at least $30 million to clean up. DU is a chemically toxic and radioactive heavy metal attractive to weapons designers because it is extremely hard and can pierce armor. The author of the PAX report, Wim Swinterberg, said the U.S. Air Force knew the harm that could be done by DU weapons and should not have used them in populated areas. The use of DU against these targets suggests the adherence of coalition forces to their own principle and guidelines. He argued they should be held accountable for the consequences. In my view, every single person that voted for the Iraq War should be publicly tried and executed. So anyways, going further, so U.S. forces gave the GPS coordinates of depleted uranium rounds along with a list of targets and the numbers fired to the Dutch Ministry of Defense, which was concerned about areas in which its troops were stationed last year. The Dutch MOD, Ministry of Defense, then released the data to PAX in response to requests under Freedom of Information law. The release of that information was a useful first step towards greater transparency. Said PAX, but the firing coordinates for most DU rounds remains unknown. There's still a whole bunch, so they gave them just a few, but still more than 300,000 DU rounds are estimated to have been fired during the 2003 Iraq War, the vast majority by U.S. forces. A small fraction were from UK tanks, the coordinates for which were provided to the UN Environment Program. A further 782,414 DU rounds are believed to have been fired during the earlier conflict in 1991, mostly by U.S. forces. Absolutely disgusting. So the Democratic Congressman Jim McDermott is now urging the U.S. Department of Defense to publish all its DU firing coordinates. These weapons have terrible health ramifications for Iraqi civilians. He said the least the U.S. could do is provide a specific targeting data so the Iraqi government can begin the complex cleanup process. The U.S. Department of Defense did not respond to a request to comment. One military source was, quote, amazed that the Dutch government had released sensitive targeting data. And yes, reading this article makes me sick to my stomach, especially when you look at the effects of depleted uranium on innocent Iraqis. If you go to DuckDuckGo, just search depleted uranium effects, and this is some of the most disgusting images of what happens in war you'll ever see in your life. So yes, welcome to the New World Order, guys. So anyways, wake up, people. Turn your TV off and demand every single person that voted for the Iraq War to be publicly prosecuted and demand for their public execution so this doesn't happen again. So again, what is depleted uranium? This is a good overview on it. It's from that searches above. Yeah, basically it's radioactive material here that's really hard and it's used to penetrate armor right here. Depleted uranium penetrator with stabilizing fins, so it penetrate the armor there. But again, why doesn't the U.S. government military just use aluminum bullets from the thin aluminum from the 9/11 quote planes that slice through the towers like butter? Why go to this extreme depleted uranium? So now if you go now to this article from 2000, before the Iraq War, before 9/11, by The Guardian, why deadly depleted uranium is a tank's buster weapons of choice. Again, putting that into public spotlight, saying, oh, we need this BS. So the use of depleted uranium weapons is again causing concerns. The people of Kosovo have been alarmed to discover that the conflict there had left radioactive contamination, just as it did in Kuwait 9 years ago. So they know about this years ago, and they still do it. Why do the United States and Britain continue to use a waste product of the nuclear industry in their weapons? Some commentators allege that it is a conspiracy between the military and the nuclear industry to dispose of dangerous waste in hostile countries. And there, I believe, is your answer to why they use it. especially given 9/11 was a false flag. So the real reasons are more complex. It goes on with another, pushing for war, etc. As with most weapons, depleted uranium is not as deadly as its proponents or its critics claim. One tank was hit 4 times with no casualties. 20 U.S. vehicles took penetrating hits from DU weapons during the Gulf War. 13 crew members were killed, but 113 others, almost 90%, survived, and the long-term health effects are not known. It is likely that DU will be phased out eventually, not for health reasons, but for military ones. Absolutely disgusting. So like always, the argument that is brushed off the easiest without explanation is usually the most likely scenario. And again, given the 9/11 false flag plus hidden tech, they don't need to use this trash and they don't even need to go to war. It appears almost certain that the quote conspiracy trying to inflict as much human suffering as possible was the actual objective of the use of depleted uranium. And in my opinion, the same goes for orchestration of all of these illegal wars by the current world government. And it doesn't matter who's president. Bush, Obama, same thing. The United States war machine is in autopilot. This was posted, I think, in 2017, this year, January 9, 2017. So America dropped 26,171 bombs in 2016. What a bloody end to Obama's reign. And according to new figures, the U.S. dropped nearly 3 bombs every hour, 24 hours a day. Dare we think how Donald Trump will continue this legacy? And again, there's a photo of drone. And one bombing technique that President Obama championed is drone strikes. And yeah, so this article goes on. While candidate Obama came to office pledging to end George W. Bush's wars, he leaves office having been at war longer than any president in U.S. history. He is also the only president to serve 2 complete terms with the nation at war. Looking back at President Obama's legacy, the Council on Foreign Relations, Mika Zenko, added up the Defense Department's data on airstrikes and made a startling revelation. In 2016 alone, the Obama administration dropped at least 26,171 bombs, is at least that much. This means that every day last year, the U.S. military blasted combatants or civilians overseas, with 72 bombs. That's 3 bombs every hour, 24 hours a day. While most of these airstrikes were in Syria and Iraq, U.S. bombs also rained down on people in Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, and Somalia and Pakistan. That's 7 majority Muslim countries. Unbelievable. Now going further, as a global research website, Obama's bombing legacy. So 4 years ago, as Obama was inaugurated for a second term, I wrote that the U.S. and its allies dropped 20,000 bombs and missiles in his first term. In his second term, they have dropped 4 times that number, bringing the total for Obama's presidency to over 100,000 bombs and missiles striking 7 countries, surpassing the 70,000 unleashed on 5 countries by George W. Bush. This is the most disgusting pile of war criminal BS I've ever seen. And now if you go to BBC, and then this was 2015, Nobel Secretary regrets Obama Peace Prize. So Obama won Peace Prize and dropped 100,000 bombs. You can't make this stuff up. So yes, Obama did in fact win a Nobel, quote, Peace Prize in 2009. And instead of rewarding him with the prize, there should be demands for protests at the White House every single day until Bush, Obama, Clinton, and everyone else involved is held to a public trial and likely public execution for unimaginable war crimes. This is the most disgusting stuff you could ever wrap your head around. Again, further solidifies that we live in a global dictatorship. So now let's look at that Charlottesville. And this is this phrase I got from old Bill Cooper, who in my view was killed because he was going to blow the whistle on 9/11, which he predicted before. So make sure to watch my part 2 video and my part 4 video stating that he probably was killed because he was going to say what actually happened on 9/11, which was towers turned to dust using free energy tech. Eventually he was going to go to there, and I believe he was not controlled in any way, whether you agree with him or not. So anyways, he always uses the phrase thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, or the Hegelian dialect, where you create a conflict to serve an end means, and then you kind of synthesize both of the sides. We'll get to that in a bit. So 9/11 strongly suggests that the largest monopolistic companies may in fact have been a creation of the black budget / misdirected $1 trillion taxpayer-funded budget. This also strongly suggests that highly publicized groups such as the KKK, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, ISIS, and even religious groups are also a direct creation or infiltration of the same nefarious governmental force. The reason is because it uses the same textbook divide and conquer strategy employed in many dictatorships, and which also leads to increased demand for more government intervention. Again, since 9/11 has not been resolved, and that none of these groups are demanding accountability for the 9/11 false flag event, then by default, until they can prove otherwise, these groups are to be assumed as just part of the world dictatorship gradually revealing itself. And during that, during those Charlottesville riots, even have LeBron James, King James, tweeting, "Hate has always existed in America. Yes, we know that, but Donald Trump just made it fashionable again. Statues has nothing to do with us now." And so many retweets. This is just BS race baiting. What is he doing? You have Lady Gaga. Do you think at Real Donald Trump at POTUS saying both sides are to blame and Charlottesville makes him a racist supporter? Yes or no? Yep, pathetic quote. Celebrities just doing their part to divide and conquer. And then there's here is if you search Obama on Google, you'll see just images here quoting Mandela Obama's tweet after Charlottesville is the most liked ever, and I'll go to that in a bit. And why is he looking at these naked kids or shirtless kids? It's just nasty. And all these New York Times, NPR, CNN is most liked in Twitter history. So much mind control propaganda. So nothing like the MSN glorifying a tweet by a disgusting war criminal. Hashtag wake up people. The number is 100,000 bombs. And the Hill tweeted, just in, George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush respond to Charlottesville. We must reject hatred in all its forms. What is happening? These people are not someone you should give platforms to and get advice from. Why give one pathetic war criminal a platform when you can give two? Hashtag lock them up. And then I had to tweet, need to put hashtag Charlottesville in perspective, and I put these tweets to those missile drops. So America dropped 26,000 bombs in 2016 alone. What a bloody end to Obama's reign. And then he had this one here. Yeah, I just screenshotted that as well. So 3 bombs every hour, and there's 72 bombs a day in 2016 alone. And then here's that famous tweet that is most likes ever. No one is born hating another person because of the color of the skin or his background or his religion. You dropped 100,000 bombs on the poorest of the poor, on an illegal war, on a blatant false flag. You are a disgusting human being. So note, why the F is Obama staring at shirtless little kids in a blatant propaganda piece? Hashtag Pizzagate. Nothing is... nothing would surprise me anymore. So anyways, especially with that email about $65,000 of hot dogs that Obama flew into the White House, allegedly. Whatever that means. And then now further in the Independent, Barack Obama on Stephen Colbert. To be honest, I still don't know what my Nobel Peace Prize was for, and neither do I. So Nobel Peace Prize has lost all credibility, and this further solidifies my view that we live in a global world governed already, and that pathetic organizations such as the Nobel Prizes or those that run it are just deep state controlled and even likely founded to give the public a false perception of reality. In fact, even locally, the divide and conquer strategy is being utilized by the NWO. A quote Facebook friend of mine posted today about protests in Vancouver, BC, Canada, utilizing the same CIA Nazi strategy. I just blocked out his name. FYI, anti-Muslim rally planned for this Saturday at Vancouver City Hall. Counter rally also planned. So thesis: anti-Muslim rally or anti-immigration. Counter rally. Antithesis against this original one. Counter rally against these people that are against Muslims or against immigration. Not sure what he meant by there because he's pretty liberal. So and then here's synthesis. Both cries for government intervention and laws to remove our rights on both sides, get their rights gone away. So this was the end goal at always. So you put something, put against one, an opposition, and then you control both sides and you get the answer you've always wanted. And so just like with Trump's call for a, quote, ban on Muslims from entering the United States during the election cycle, he's just helping further the divide between people. So, and this is where my prediction comes. So Trump will win again in 2020. So once people realize that 9/11 was orchestrated and hidden technology exists, then it starts making sense as to why Trump is the president, why he will win again in 2020, and why the wall will be built. So bookmark this video and keep this in mind as the world unfolds. This is my prediction, speculation, evidence-based prediction video, and to see how well I do. So I'm putting it out there and you can scrutinize it later. But anyways, so let me know all your thoughts there. It's going to be pretty interesting. So since hidden technology exists such that free energy tech can make it possible to live in the most remote locations in the world, because if you have free energy tech, you can live outside the grid, and likely other tech like propulsion, field propulsion, where you can just pretty much fly anywhere around. So if you can live anywhere around the world with very little need for intervening governmental bodies, then the current immigration and refugee quote crisis is being done purposely by design. Remember that. Keep that in mind whenever you're protesting refugees or immigration. This is by design. Combine this with fabricated terror events, then you have a situation where people are divided by nationalism and globalism, when in fact it should be an individual liberty versus world government tyranny. This is where a character like Trump fits in perfectly. He's a billionaire, loudmouth businessman that speaks his mind yet is attacked non-stop by the mainstream media. Again, my view is that's by design. So the people that fall for the CIA, deep state, MSN propaganda get brainwashed into believing Trump is the second coming of Hitler, which I believe Hitler was also a puppet of the New World Order, but we'll get to that later. Because pretty much the Nazis were funded by Western companies and governments. And I might do that video on that. So the people that see through the mainstream media brainwashing feel that Trump is a sympathetic figure, know that they themselves aren't racist. So remember, the media is calling anyone that supports Trump racist, but then people themselves aren't racist. So then they'll think, oh, they're just attacking him unfairly, which they are, but this is to cause a divide, and thus are likely to push for the wall to be built. I'm talking about the wall in this one. So the wall, in my opinion, has nothing to do with the orchestrated immigration crisis. There's nothing to do about immigration, but rather it is to keep people inside like a prison, and the United States is set to be a stronghold or main governing body of the current world government, which is again just slowly revealing itself. Thus, Trump is a figure that pushes what many believe is quote common sense in wanting to limit immigration, denounce both sides in Charlottesville, and call out quote Muslim terror, especially when the mainstream media goes off the deep end for denouncing this quote common sense approach by Trump. The only problem with this common sense approach, again, that's why a lot of people side with Trump, because the mainstream media is unfairly attacking him. But again, the problem with this common sense approach is that 9/11 proves all of these so-called quote issues facing humanity, like climate change and immigration, are facing design. It's basically all these issues like climate change and immigration is by design, or the solutions are already available. They're just not letting it happen by the current global government. Remember, hidden technology is the name of the game. So until Trump points this out, which I believe he won't, he's just serving as the perfect person for the ruling elites to use to further divide and conquer the peoples of the world. Combine this with the fact that Trump is an alpha male, which is in stark contrast to the ideological, subversive, social justice, feminist, anti-patriarchal nonsense being pushed at all levels of society. He naturally fits the orchestrated social divide. Hashtag pure genius. Remember, so you have the mainstream media and pretty much school, education, everything is pushing for this feminist social justice warrior, this random BS ideological subversive agenda. But then the president of the most powerful country in the world, at least publicly, is complete stark contrast to it. So now you've purposely created a divide. People that hate the media go for him, but then the ones that are brainwashed go for the social justice side. But again, both sides missed the picture. This hidden tech, this is by creation. It's absolutely genius. So still don't believe me, we live in the end times, which I'll then basically explain this, and I'll show you this tweet from YouTube. This also explains why Trump won and why it was by design, because you can't make this stuff up. So YouTube's official Twitter account, what happens when you know you're not a boy or a girl, why they, them pronouns matter, and I don't know what this is. So the pronouns he and she feel like a box, now you have forcing what people say. Again, this is a tiny fraction of the population pushed to the extreme. Jimmy G says delete this. Not like that. So that is YouTube's official Twitter account, and that's pretty much why Trump won. But again, I believe it's on purpose. These people that are running it are not Stupid. So it's still not convinced that the government, quote, created Google, which owns YouTube. It's genius how it's done. It's a monopoly when you think it's private corporations. Highly doubt it's, quote, private corporations. So this tweet alone just further illustrates how governments can create companies that appear independent, and then they push ideological subversion techniques, create monopolies, censor anyone and everything, and all while having the, quote, cover of being a private corporation doing whatever it wants. Hashtag pure genius. Actually, it's actually amazing genius. So anyways, I had to take this to Twitter, and I wrote, "We live in the end times, hashtag ideological subversion." And yep, we sure do. When I saw this, I'm like, what is happening? So when Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Google and Apple censor, delete, block, suspend, shadow ban, or terminate your account, you're best to take your grievances with the White House. And here's a video from David Seaman. He was saying emergency exodus from YouTube. He was hating the censorship by Google and YouTube, and he wrote, "F YouTube, F Eric Schmidt." And then I commented, "You got to realize that Google YouTube was never a private company. Schmidt is just a deep state puppet and always has been. Want to protest Google? Then go to the White House. Might go to the White House for every protest until they pretty much publicly prosecute the war criminals walking among us." And this person involved is laughing, which he is, in his friend's yacht on the Virgin Mobile. Yeah, billionaire. That's pretty much what Obama's doing. And now here this person says, "Matthew Solutions, where's your non-source for that info?" And I wrote, "Everything starts to make sense when you understand, quote, what happened on 9/11. The towers turned to dust. Check out my channel for my video series on it. NWO is already here and are 100 plus years more advanced in their tech." This person says, "Yes, Space Gaps, you won't be laughing any much longer. Neither will all the psychopaths. Well, this lifetime or the next." And going further to this, how basically my argument that governments create these monopolies so that you think it's private corporation capitalism is evil, blah blah blah, but it's not. It's just sophisticated centralization of government, which is way more efficient than a lot of people think. This one from Jimmy Dore, world's most powerful CEO joins Pentagon Defense Board. This is Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, CEO, and he wrote, "A pleasure to host Secretary of Defense James Mattis at Amazon HQ in Seattle today." There's Mattis, and there's this puppet. Bezos, in my opinion, everyone's a puppet. So if you think Jeff Bezos is just quote naturally, if he just naturally became Amazon CEO, owner of the Washington Post and Whole Foods, and he signs a deal with the CIA worth $600 million, now meets with United States military defense personnel, all because he is just a quote savvy businessman, instead of this all being just a cover for increased governmental centralization from the very beginning. In my view, Amazon from the very beginning had a purpose, and that was centralization, monopolies, etc. And Bezos, if you don't think that the Bezos is just a deep state puppet or mind-controlled clone, I don't know, I wouldn't rule anything out. Remember, hidden tech, you're speculating. Once you know that there is hidden tech, speculation is the name of the game. Once you got to get better and better at discerning facts, and then you can get better at speculation/prediction. Then again, so if you don't believe that Bezos was from the beginning Amazon, all that was initially used for centralization and monopoly creation, then again, please go for a long hard walk outside and flush out all the propaganda you've absorbed in your lifetime. Hashtag wake up, people. So now this is where my views on what the world is, or at least at the essence of what we're up against. So the battle is a spiritual battle, not just physical. When speculating as to what is the best course of action to fight back against the growing dictatorship and centralization of global corporate governments, again, I can't stress this enough. Put a T there. I can't stress enough that we need to always think about 9/11 and hidden technology. Hashtag never forget. Many people feel that stockpiling in gold will save us from the NWO, or buying Bitcoin will free us from the NWO, or Bitcoin as part of the NWO, or blockchain technology will free us from the NWO. Many think that the Constitution or human rights or buying guns will save us. But then the question you have to ask yourself is, did the innocent people of Iraq and Middle East think Yeah, think that if only they bought more gold and Bitcoin, they would have been free from the cancer and birth defects causing depleted uranium heaped upon them. They think that international law against illegal wars and war crimes is going to save them. And remember, there are laws against the wars and war crimes that they did in torture and otherwise. That's not going to help. So also, before speculating on quote technology or what quote currency or what quote law will save us, we need to know just how far the hidden tech is. 100 years, 200 years? I don't know. It is my view that the hidden tech is 100 plus years advanced, such that we currently live in an antiquated reality that is easily managed and steered through a gradual trickling down of specific technologies, again, by design. When you pretty much run these giant monopolistic companies, you can control the top and then trickle down the new tech. Yeah, even though people in the actual company are just working really hard, finding out, and let's say they get some new tech, they're like, okay, we're gonna keep that for later, and you just do what you're told for your paycheck. So this helps explain why information tracking and information overloading technologies keep advancing, such as the internet surveillance and online propaganda, but actual liberating technologies remain stagnant, such as gasoline and the pathetic cell phone battery life. Your phone gets better, your battery life gets worse and worse. So what can we do? So the constant demoralization, censorship, orchestrated wars, and orchestrated global human suffering, combined with the constant propaganda fed to us in the media, education, health, and government systems throughout our lives, strongly suggest that what the current cowardly ruling elites are most afraid of and seek to control the strongest is our very thoughts. This also explains the constant pushing of relativistic doctrines, pushing of materialistic science. I'll put that in quotation marks. Anytime you assume something, it's not scientific when you get too far into it. When you ignore hidden tech, when you ignore the world is more than just material. So materialistic consumerism and hopelessness amongst the entire world population. This is what's trying to be pushed across us. This feeling of hopelessness is purposely being pushed. So thus, most people in the world may in actuality not have had a single thought of their own, because this is what we're up against: constant propaganda. So how could you think of an original thought when everything you've ever known has been manipulated, fake, or controlled in some way? So thus, what appears to be the most dreaded move we can all take is literally to wake up. Yes, start questioning everything and stop giving in to the quote system, whatever that may be. Hashtag boycott everything. This suggests that our very thoughts are much more than just inside our heads, but may in fact echo across the universe. This may even explain what quote prayer is, and that it may just take a few people thinking the same thought to resonate into real change in the metaphysical or spiritual world. So there's something being actively suppressed. Let's read that again. So there's something being actively suppressed, and it goes beyond even just free energy and hidden tech. It may just be the actual makeup of the universe, or role in it, and it just may lead to unlocking the key inside our heads. Hashtag wake up, people. So that's what I've pretty much come to realization of. Our thoughts is what they're afraid of. They don't want people thinking. So that's interesting. So summary and conclusions. So 9/11 was the opening ceremony to the New World Order, or NWO, and now the Olympic Games have begun. By games, I mean psychological operations, false flag, terror events, illegal wars, divide and conquer riots, race wars, and the gradual public disclosure of the true cowardly, pathetic ruling elite becoming more and more blatant and in our faces. And to summarize, physical items such as money, Bitcoin, gold, or politicians such as Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders alone are not going to be the, quote, answer to take back our world. What it will take is a global shift in our consciousness, a global shift in our collective thoughts, a global awakening to the true rulers of the world, and a global peaceful disobedience to current political, educational, and news media establishment. In essence, what the ruling elite, whatever they are, fear the most is that we literally wake up from the trance we have been in and start actually thinking for the first time in our lives. 9/11 may have been the worst day in human history, but understanding exactly what happened and the ramifications of that day gives us a true beacon of light for us to discern between what is true and who to trust in the information overload matrix that we currently all live in. If a politician doesn't publicly talk about 9/11 and hidden technology, then don't vote for them, regardless of how, quote, trustworthy they are. If a news outlet, whether mainstream or alternative, doesn't fully comprehend this, then they themselves are being used as pawns, whether deliberately or by ignorance. And now the question remains as to just what the, quote, closing ceremony of the NWO might be. Anyways, stay tuned for 9/11 Truth Part 6. And that is all for today. Let me know your thoughts on this pretty extensive video. This is my views, and again, based on 9/11 as a fact, as fabricated terror, and as a fact that hidden technology, and as a fact that governments around the world are not making this publicly known. And again, why is Obama looking at these kids? This person should be in jail and, in my opinion, publicly executed. Anyone that voted for the Iraq War knowingly or unknowingly about what happened on 9/11. Same thing as driving a car drunk. If you drive a car drunk and kill someone, you are liable for it. Same thing as voting for military war and not knowing the facts, or not looking at the facts, or being too scared of the facts. You need to be thrown in jail or publicly executed. And yeah, that's all for today. Hopefully you learned from this one. And yeah, the depleted uranium, just looking at those side effects, is one of the most brutal things you could ever see in your life. Anyways, that's all for today. Hopefully you learned from this. This is how I view the world. Hopefully it helps you make sense of the world and also get some calm, because we know what we're up against, and that the day-to-day fear-mongering all over the internet and the mainstream media is has a purpose, and yeah, we know that purpose, in my view, which is just to increase human suffering. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Like always, you can download these exact notes in the link below, as well as viewing these notes on Steemit, so check it out there. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for another Math Easy solution.